Maybe perfection assumes that you had some kind of expectation beforehand, which assumes some kind of desire for control, which therefore means that there's not so much space for surprise.
How does the creator, right, the business owner, the thought leader, disconnect from all that noise?
Thought leadership is the how. So if I meet somebody that is up, down, in the middle, always up, always down, my question will always be how. And if they can communicate their how they do things, you can learn a lot from somebody else if they're willing to teach you a lot.
You know, when you put your message out there, right, you're testing a bunch of stuff, but you're also sharing your beliefs with the world, and that can be a little bit intimidating.
So if you believe that your people are your most valuable asset, start with them. Find them.
Spoiler alert, all this was like AI produced. It's not live at all.
Definitely not.
We've got some
Hey,
fresh new
I'm
young
Luis.
talent
And
doing some
I'm
things that I know
Luis.
you haven't
And you're
heard
listening to the
before.
Content is Profit podcast.
Wrong bottom, but it's okay.
We got it. One day I'll get it.
We need.
It's okay.
That's why we got the labeler. We need to put the labels on the bottom
I
so
know.
we know which one we're pressing.
At the bottom.
Yep.
The bottom.
That's actually a word that has been difficult to pronounce.
I know.
Bottom and bottom, they're like so similar. It's
long-
very difficult.
How long have you been in the
All right.
US?
Tangent alert.
Okay, yeah.
Let's keep going.
Anyways, guys, today we have a special guest, like we mentioned before. What are we talking about, Fonzie? I mean, you have some topics in there.
I have a few topics. We're gonna be talking about branding, right? That kind of like intersection between humans and brands, content ecosystems, content creators in the C-suite. And I want to touch on some topics, especially, you know, the role of AI in today's content creation role. I think we're going to dive deep into that.
Oh,
I'm going to make
love
sure
it.
we dive deep into that.
That's right, guys. If you're enjoying this show, of course, go ahead and click that bell and the subscribe button, the follow button, whatever you like. But go ahead and follow the show because every week, 3 episodes are dropping in your phone.
That is right. And if today's guests help you move one step closer towards your goal, please don't forget to share this episode and leave a 5-star review.
So we met this guest obviously through social media connections. We actually connected with their team first, and then we had this 11-minute call that was pure gold. And we're like, we have to do this. We have to do it together. And that's why she came to the show.
Fun fact, the other day I sent the link, the 11-minute call to somebody, and they were like, that is oddly specific. And I was like, I know. It's on purpose.
It's on purpose.
Guys, today's guest is currently building Branding Mag. I thought she was only the the editor-in-chief.
Well,
she's actually the CEO as well. So
She's
mind
been building
blown.
for a few years.
She has a great team, great community, and she has worked with some of the largest companies on the planet, helping them build longevity through content and positioning.
That's right. In her home country, she developed and currently hosts Rebels and Rulers.
I
It was
like
the
that name.
first forum for open branding and the biggest conference of its kind in Romania.
That is cool. That is pretty epic.
She's also a firm believer that every brand needs an editor-in-chief, not only for self-promotion or announcements, right? She also says that the editor-in-chief should be at the same level as a C-suite executive. Yes, baby. Let's talk more about that. Fun fact, she also lives in paradise.
Well, I'm sure we'll get a little bit of that in today's conversation. Guys, please welcome the newly proclaimed by us, the soulful creator, Flavia Barbat. Welcome, Flavia.
Wow, you guys, really, that was a pleasure to watch just on my own, sitting over here. Thank you so much for the introduction, really. I appreciate
Welcome,
it.
Flavia. You know, I feel like we have a little hiccups sometimes here and there in some of the introductions, but I feel like that's
what it is.
That's part of our branding, right? That's part of our branding is leaning into those mistakes, you know. English is not a first language, so we're like, you know what? If we pronounce a word like bottom that we don't know which bottom it is, bottom of the barrel or bottom, you know, that you use to put in your shirt.
Button.
It's okay. It's okay. We lean into that stuff. So, Flavia, I'm happy because today maybe it's the day that we truly learn what branding is, you know?
Well, first of all, to your point about imperfection, I think that, side note, I think that maybe perfection assumes that you had some kind of expectation beforehand, which assumes some kind of desire for control, which therefore means that there's not so much space for surprise for that authenticity that you guys, value when you see it happen kind of magically, spontaneously, etc. And that might tie just a little bit to your AI, to your AI generated content, just because
Yeah.
it's quite programmed, no? So
That's
we're
right.
in the
Spoiler alert,
space.
all this was like AI produced. There's
No.
not live at all.
Definitely
no.
not.
Definitely not. Flavia, obviously, when we connected, I don't think you knew who we were. I definitely did not know who you were, and it was such a pleasant surprise, right? And as I was like getting to know your content and your message and your thing, and obviously that sparked it. That conversation sparked it. But it's awesome. You have like this pretty deep definition about like content and content ecosystem and how content should be like around the world, right? You have like this very specific view on that. You worked on it for so many years, right? So can you tell us a little
Yeah.
bit of the beginning of that, right? Like, was that always your point of view? We talk here on the show a lot about messaging and how, when you put your message out there, right? You're testing a bunch of stuff, but you're also trying to see, you're sharing your beliefs with the world, and that can be a little bit intimidating. So can you share a little bit of your journey when you first started, your journey with Brand Mag and what you guys been doing the last few years?
Yeah. So, first of all, I didn't start Branding Mag, which is something that a lot of people don't know. It is mine. It has been mine for a very long time, sole owner, etc. Which also a lot of people don't entirely know, just because I haven't been very vocal about the things. To be honest,
Yeah.
I've spent a lot of time just honing in on what I was trying to do. I'm a big believer of quality content. I'm a big believer
Yeah.
of branding outside of just organizations, but also I think that a lot of the education that you get when you study branding and its core pillars affects you as a person, as a community, as a nation, which hit very close to home for me when I first discovered branding, because I really wanted to. I grew up a lot in the States, and I went to university in New York. And when I started studying, media, communications, things like this, I was a writer by trade, so it fit very well.
Yeah.
And I discovered branding. And my dream since I was little was to go back to Romania. And to do something
Yeah.
and to build something in the States where I had, the opportunities that my parents had given me, but to also take it back home somehow. And so the thing that caught me about branding was how the pillars of that concept of the entire thing could affect a nation.
Yeah.
And that's what really powered me for many, many years. Obviously, in the meantime, I think I've been building in silence. I've never
Yeah.
been very vocal about the things that I've done, and I've been very focused,
Yeah.
and I've also been very consistent. I don't think there's anything I say today that I wasn't saying 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And nobody, it's not necessarily something that you study in school. Maybe today it is, but back then it wasn't. I was
Yeah.
really, I don't know, I think I was the epitome of just very driven by my personal side, that wanted to do something for my country back home. And that gave me the drive to just stay completely focused on learning as much as I could and building Branding Mag, which I had, gotten in the meantime.
Yeah.
Building Branding Mag with just quality content, no sponsored content, no ads, no, I stayed as clear of those things as I possibly could. And the magical thing that happened in the meantime is that when I graduated from university, to be completely frank, and I went to a very good university, the kinds of jobs that I was being offered were what I considered to be not exactly where I should be, given everything that I had done, all of the internships, all of the experience, etc.
Yeah.
And I had this opportunity, this thought. Anyways, it's a long story that I won't tell here, but I had this opportunity, alignment of the stars, let's say, where a consulting business that was meant to have multiple components, the others that were involved in that actually got, I don't know, their claims to fame at that moment, and so they
Yeah.
went on to do their own things, which I was super happy about. We're still friends, and
Yeah.
I was kind of left with my content piece.
Wow.
And so
Okay.
I told my parents, I said, listen, I have this opportunity, I think, to combine Branding Mag with doing consulting and content, because I have a feeling that what I'm trying to do with Branding Mag could apply very well to large organizations, and I'd like to give it a shot. Can you help me out? And so they agreed. I was fortunate enough that they agreed to help sustain me for a while I was trying to
Nice.
build that.
Yeah.
And the first client that I got for consulting for content was Sapient Nitro, who in the meantime, while I was building it, got bought by Publicis, and they merged multiple components to make Publicis Sapient. And I, in that time period, had been building, let's say, my first content ecosystem based off of what I was doing for Branding Mag for another company. And it worked
Interesting.
incredibly well. And
Wow.
it also helped through the transition of obviously that acquisition. And it just
That's amazing.
it worked. It was my first proof point beyond my platform that there was really something there. And so ever since then, I've just flown through through that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
haven't really steered in any other direction, to be
That's-
I
honest.
love it. I love the focus
yeah.
that you have around this.
You should learn a little bit from focus.
Yeah, focus is definitely.
Yes.
I'm working on it.
He gets very scattered. He's very creative. Just gets scattered sometimes. It's okay. That's why he has his older brother here. Reel him back
There's
in.
an
But
extreme. There's an extreme of everything. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I've also had to learn recently. Because being on your own is not easy.
Yeah.
When I was
Yeah.
in New York, I had a very strict schedule. I was very much, how should I say this? The media will always tell you what entrepreneurship means and how you're
Yeah.
supposed to do the things. And when I was younger, I think I would more easily fall into the trap of looking around to see what others are doing. And I
Yeah.
think that as you get even a little bit older and you progress through some, let's say, also critical experiences that really teach you your values, because you sit in a moment where you have to stand up for them against
Yeah.
something maybe that you never thought you'd stand up against, a person, a situation, whatever it might be. You learn not to look around so much like you used to before. And so instead of now, for example, instead of having a super rigorous schedule like I used to before, where I was, going to sleep at 11, waking up at 6, and I was, like in my apartment in New York on my own, building this stuff, so much so that, friends were kind of, going
Separating.
slow.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was just never really out.
Yeah.
Now it's completely different. Now the
Yeah.
approach is, for example, I know this may sound difficult, but I'm trying to see if I can forget what weekends mean. So
Interesting.
I'm trying to take every day as being, my boyfriend laughs because I kind of learned this from him, and that every day is Sunday. Because if you believe in the stuff that you're doing, then it's not work. These are your
Yeah.
activities. Your activities are your activities of all types. And so any day when you wake up, or any time of the day, if it's 2 a.m., if it's 6 in the morning, whatever it might be, you need to, you have the possibility to wake up and take everything as it is, without sitting there thinking, oh, but what about this and the time and the,
Yeah.
and you kind of try to go with the flow, which, okay, when you have calls, it's a little bit,
Yeah.
you obviously know what day it is because you have a call. But I found that there is I can get slowly closer to that, even
Yeah.
with the activities that I have and
Yeah.
what people expect of me. And it's completely different than how I started. Much
That's
more
so
balanced.
interesting. That's so interesting. Like, I love this. I wrote every day Sunday. It's like right before this interview, I was on another interview, and they asked me kind of like, what are the plan during next year? And we're talking about the studio and the location and our fractional teams. And on the personal level, right, I think my answer was not work-life balance, but like integration, right? Because at the end of the day, like we're creating in our line of work, we're having these conversations. This is one of the best, our favorite time of day to have these conversations and to run the show, right? Then we have people coming into the studio, then we have the workouts, then we have, we all play soccer. I have 2 kids, but I really struggled over the last year on that separation. Like, in the morning, do this, and then it's work time, and then I go home, and then my head is still at work, but then I feel guilty because my kids are there. And so during this last year has been like really, really challenging. And just this weekend, right, I made a personal decision, but in my mind has been, is integration, right? So when I'm with my kids, I'm with my kids 100%. When I'm working out 100%. When I'm doing this and doing this. But even weekends tended to be like this like break of flow in a sense,
Mm-hmm.
because it was like family time, and there was like I was not allowed to like work or touch the computer because I needed to rest, and I'm doing air quotations for those listening, right? But it was like really hard on Monday then, because the flow that I might have had, Thursday or Friday, it was broken completely, right? And then it's like, okay, what can I do those days that I enjoy? I still do. I love what I do. So like I'll jump in maybe an hour or two and, get some stuff done. And then when the kids wake up, we do that. Or when they're napping, or then we play. But it's allowing yourself to
Just be in the moment.
Be in the
To
moment
just
and the flow.
in the moment.
Yes, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I like that perspective. Definitely we're gonna make a shirt that says every day is Sunday.
My boyfriend's gonna be either a little bit terrified or stoked. I don't know. It's
tell
him that we'll give him royalties too.
Yeah. Before you ask a very intelligent question, I have another one. Because he does the best questions, but a lot of people that tune in, right? They're building something, right? They're putting their message out there, and including us, right? And we're publishing. And in the world that we're coming, there's a lot of attractive characters, right? Technically, we're the attractive character of the show, right? There's a lot of personality here, and that was maybe by mistake, on purpose. We don't know, but we are the face of the show. You build this publishing platform with not your face, right? And it was like quality of the content and your content ecosystem, and you still got these consulting gigs, right?
Yeah.
How was that? Like, how were you getting those? Because there's people in the community or maybe listening, right, that they might not be interested in being the face of the brand, right? And being the face of or doing themselves this content. We're big fans of video because we enjoy being in front of a camera, right? Like the first time we recorded our voices in microphones, we're like, oh boy, that sounds sexy. That sounds good, right?
So the opposite experience of everybody else that listens to their own voice, and they're like, who is that? I want nothing to do with that person.
Yeah, pretty much. And we cannot relate to anybody on that story because, we're the opposite. But
that I'm just gonna...
That was just me.
No. And it was both. We're like, wow, like, sounds good. But every time we share that story, I'm like, we sound so self-centered every single time.
It is what it is. I think it's like finding those elements that help you move forward. But I'm curious, right? Like what was your system at that point to generate that cash, right? Because you're sharing your story that, you had the support of your family, which probably a lot of people do. We certainly had it in the first couple of years of Beast Bros, right? How was that for you? Like how were you having those meetings? How were you meeting those prospects or those clients to bridge the gap between your content or your brand, what you were building, and then creating the cash flow?
So I think I can maybe draw a little bit of a parallel. So as editor-in-chief of Branding Mag, the beauty of it was that I could get in anywhere. I was media, and people really like media when they, can benefit from it in some way, and then they really don't like media for everything else that it does. So it's, but anyways, I rode that wave at the beginning for sure. Not just at the beginning, but I was trying to meet as many people as I could, because I knew that although I was quite quiet with, online, let's say, in person, I'm not so quiet. In person, I'm okay, to go and talk to people, to have a conversation, to say what I think, And so I had no problem going to events on my own. I went to Con Lions when I was very young by myself for the first time. I will never forget the fairy godmother of the old lady that spoke only French, in whose apartment I stayed. And I have a picture of her waving to me from the balcony, like very picturesque at the end of that trip. I went on my own, and I met as many people as I possibly could. So I was very much preaching the message, just on a much more personal level. And so, for example, the folks that ended up hiring me for what became Publicis Sapient in the end, I met them in Cannes. So it's just one example. And I know that people listening might be thinking, okay, well, I don't have a media platform with, I imagine there were also contributors for Branding Mag. Yeah. So I was spreading the message that way as well, because I was telling them, no, this article is not good enough. No, imagine that. You tell PR people, you tell contributors, no, this is too self promotional. No, this is not good for your brand. I'm sure this is not what you want to sound like. And so we were known for being very strict from the very beginning because it very much was a personification of me. So even though my
Yeah.
face wasn't on there, people to this day think of it as being Flavia's, which is something that we're trying to branch out of slowly by me claiming my own space more visibly now, so that everybody can live in more symbiosis.
Yeah.
But I don't think everybody needs something like that in order to have the same effect. I think there are so many people that are producing really fantastic content today because they're sharing their journey, their message, etc. The tools are absolutely there. There's so much potential for everybody to get invited to things or be in conversations or just join conversations in a way that I chose to do it, face to face and live. But I also didn't have, let's say, the capacity to do it any other way at that time. While I think maybe now there are many more options to put your foot in, kind of, through the door.
You
Yeah,
mentioned
I
there.
had the support. I had the support of my parents. This is true. But imagine if my first gig was the size that it was. It was quite soon that I was a little bit on my own. Actually, my parents came back in, and I have to give my hat off to them for that. They came back in when we wanted to build the first Rebels and Rulers in Romania, which was a huge ask. And when you want to build something of that size in a country that is, I think, a former communist country that maybe is not, definitely doesn't have the budgets of a US, to get sponsors and things like this in a way that still allowed us to make it feel natural and authentic the way Branding Mag is. Because, for example, nobody could pay to be on stage. Nobody, just because they were a sponsor, would get somebody on stage. So to stick to my scruples with that event as well, I needed a little bit of help with the backing. And my parents, because it was Romania and it hit close to home for them, they definitely were one of our biggest supporters. So
that's so incredible to hear. There's a couple of lessons obviously there to distill, right? It's like, hey, who are the people that you are building this with, right? At the end of the day, also family for us, Hispanic family, right? We're from Venezuela. So our family has supported our journey from the very beginning, right? Whether that's emotionally, financially, like in many ways. And so I encourage people, right? Like reconnect if you're not connected with your family, and support each other, right? The other thing that you mentioned was on the platform. Maybe not everybody has. You said we were media. Well, today there's a lot of media, right? Like we even talk about this concept of your platform, which could be really anything. For us, is this podcast, right? And like you said, I have Branding Mag, and that gets me anywhere. Well, we've been able to talk to literally any single person that we want to talk about in the world. We tell them, hey, come to our show, let's do this. And he has opened so many doors, right? And it's incredible. And we know people that do it through Instagram collaborations. You don't need a full fancy podcast. You can really connect as media with anything. So I think like it's just the go and ask. And I love that you shared that story. So thank you so much.
I think there's a lot of value in what you said earlier too, about you being, and I'm making air quotes in here for those listening, kind of like difficult to publish with, in a sense that you're like, hey, no, I don't think this is what you want to sound, like you actually
holding up to standards.
Holding up to standards and knowing what the values of your publications are. And when you were talking about that, my mind immediately went to all these freaking articles that come out in like, not to like bad mouth, but whatever, like Forbes and all these other publications that it just sounds so diluted. Right. And in my mind, I went to a video that I watched for you, right, about you in Instagram that you posted about broetry, content farms, right? Is the internet okay? And in there, you were kind of sharing about publication that send you an email, right, about collaborating in their platform. And then at the end of the email, they were talking about like, well, and you can actually have AI write this thing for you. Like there's no substance in any of that, right? And honestly, when I read, maybe back in the day, somebody publishing in Forbes, yes, had that, perceived leverage, or, you would read somebody's name in Forbes and you would say, wow, this person has influence. Nowadays, I have zero of that. Every time I read about somebody, I'm like, cool. Like we've been offered,
Show me
you
a
know,
podcast.
people have told us, hey, pay X amount of money and we'll publish you in these magazines and stuff like that. How do I know this thing is legit?
I mean,
So I love the fact
we did get that email that one time, and I think this is like a year in. We were like in a brand new like little office. Finally, we're able to afford like a little space to work out of the apartment, and we get this email. You guys have been selected top marketing agency for this Dubai event, and we're like, wait, how?
We're like top marketing agency of what?
Of what? Like we're not doing it, and we ended up jumping on a call with them. I really wanted to find out how they rated that. I was like, well, great. Like I will use that more in my marketing, but it was just a sales call, right? They were selling us to go buy tickets at this event and to get a fake award, and it was a really negative experience. And I'm like, wow. I'm very grateful that happened early in our journey, because now we're like, that solidified the decision of us be like, we need to build our own platform and continue to spread the message and the ideas and the things that we think and the people with the people that we admire.
Yeah. But so, I think the value on that and the lesson here is like, stick to your values, what you believe in, right? And I think you're playing the long game, which is, I know the type of message I want to share, right? And I want the people that come here, like, earn that in a way as well, but also respecting the context of the publication, right? And I think personally, I feel that's how I feel about Content is Profit, which is, all right, cool. Like, let's bring all these awesome creators, right? Awesome business owners. And sure, we have our own points of view, but at the same time, we're not going to be like, yeah, let's just dilute everything that comes out, right? We're like, how can we bring the most amount of value for the people that we're trying to serve? And that kind of like leads to my question, which is with Branding Mag. I'm not gonna lie, as soon as I read the name, I was like, oh, this is a huge publication. I was like, you know, and I'm sure it's a big publication, right? But I personally hadn't heard about it before, but just the name of it, I was like, wow, this is huge. And now as I started investigating and reading the stuff, and you telling me that you don't take like advertisers, right? I'm even more surprised on how you're building this, right? And I'm just curious on, where do you want to take Branding Mag, right? Like, what is your game plan? Like, do you know, is it just like building this content ecosystem and getting consulting on the back end for certain brands? Or do you have any other ways that you're thinking about growing Branding Mag?
So you've caught us with Branding Mag at a very interesting point, I would say, because to go just for a second back to what you were saying about the Broetry Content Farms title. If you notice, AI is not mentioned in that title.
Yeah. No.
And it's incredible how from an entire video where it's mentioned, I think maybe a couple of times or something like this, people very much jump to say that AI is the problem. Now, what I have learned in the last few months, also because at Branding Mag we had for a while a chief innovation officer right about at the beginning of the year when this AI started happening, because we needed some, you know, external help in figuring out what it means, how it works, because I wanted to understand a little bit more about what was going on beyond just, you know, what I was reading online and what people were focusing on, because I felt the narrative was skewed. And together with these two sides, imagine a group of editors and writers, and then somebody that was very wholeheartedly a believer in AI. The balance between us that happened was quite magical, I would say. And what I learned through the process, and I realized that I had known all along, but I had fallen again into that same thing of trying to like point at the problem, is that this is not the fault of AI. Like AI is simply taking something that we were already doing, unfortunately, online, and just exploding it exponentially. Because copying and pasting, empty content, filler content, even content marketing, and the fact that it, in my opinion, it's done a little bit backwards. Like you always have products, service launches, campaigns, etc., and you create content to fill the gaps in those things. While the way we always approach it is from a person point of view, hence the name Thought Leadership, and why when people rat on thought leadership, I kind of sit there and wonder, like, did you really think this think this through, thought leadership is not a bad term. You're talking about somebody's thoughts. I mean, those are pretty, I don't know if you can get more unique or more, inside somebody's character and experience more than that. And the idea of leading with that is that you lead with that. Like you think about things and then you share them with the world, not because you're trying to overtly promote something that has to do with a product, a service, or the organization. That all happens anyways when you build thought leadership into the content ecosystem. Incredibly, when you start with people, the whole organization benefits in exactly the way that they want to, from a resource, profit, etc. perspective. But you start with the people. Those are your most, how many people would agree with me that people are their most valuable asset? How many CEOs have you heard say that? Yeah. So they believe that that is true. But when it comes to content, which ironically is what? Verbal identity, which isn't touted even as close to visual identity as it should be. Imagine visual identity has its guardians, its guidelines, its thing. You can't step out of that box or you get slapped on the hand. Verbal identity, on the other hand, doesn't get nearly enough education inside the organization, doesn't get supported as well. It doesn't get brought into like a cohesive ecosystem beyond a brand narrative that maybe is localized for the regions. And there are some proof points, but proof points being what we've done or what we're doing, but not how we think or who we are based on the people that have decided to align their lives with our organization for a certain period of time. That's a big decision that somebody made, to sit there and say, I want to work for you. So if you believe that your people are your most valuable asset, start with them. Find them. Because PR can only handle so many personal brands to promote, and there are probably so many other brilliant, bright minds in your organization that, may not be the best. I always say the best thinkers don't always make the best writers, but that's okay. There are so many fantastic editors on this planet, and ghostwriting is not even remotely a bad thing if you find the right ghostwriter. I've been able to go in and completely understand who a person is and write as they do. So this is the approach that I think is very much missing. And so when you look at AI, I'm always just thinking, this is not the fault of AI. We need to take responsibility for what we've done, for what we're doing. And there's still time. It's not like it's the end of the world.
Yeah,
I really 100%. Don't believe it is. Like there's still time, and you can thrive with content built that way, I'm sure. If I may answer your question about Branding Mag, at the moment when all of this happened, it was about around the exact time when we said that Branding Mag needs to reach like its next level. We had built this reputation as kind of like a passion project for many of us over these years. And I realized that it's a good time for us to revisit the brand, revisit the platform, and think about what does this look like if it's meant to be to the name of your podcast, a profitable business on its own. Because now I can command the quality of the content with big brands, should they choose to work with us in some capacity. Because I have that reputation as Branding Mag, and I have that reputation as me. So we can do things the way we want and still uphold the values. I firmly believe there is a right way to do it, and we're in the middle of exploring what that looks like. One of the options, obviously, is to take the building of content ecosystems and all of that mentality, which I call editorial marketing, the combination of quality editorial with, let's say, like a marketing system or comm system, to take editorial marketing and kind of produce it for brands that want to publish that content in a space like Branding Mag, where they're next to their peers, where, for example, when we do ads on LinkedIn, so it's not about the audience that we have currently. It's, it might not be the bajillions that others, promote. And I'm totally okay with that, because when I do ads on LinkedIn, for example, with whatever budget we may have at the moment from ourselves or from our partners in the future, our ads get results like 4 times or even 35 times the benchmark because of who we are. And because of probably, the same experience that you had, Fonzie, when you went on the platform, or when you hear me talking about it. That has so much value. that I've created value for partners to come on the platform, but on my own terms. Because I know it's good for them and it's good for me, not because I'm trying to be tricky. That's not the point.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of honesty, is that
Yes.
people can kind of know that you're honest.
Yeah, and
I love it.
I can feel the passion
Yes.
through the screen right now, and it's so
Might be the
refreshing.
heat.
I know. Come on, guys. AC here. But I love that, right? Because authenticity, right? Something that we talked about, and initially in the show, this show means a lot to us, right? Like it's opened so many doors, it brought so many opportunities, right? It's our baby, and initially it was so hard, but we made a decision early on to lean on authenticity. Like I remember having a conversation with one of our awesome friends and mentors, Bart, right? And we talked about identity, and we talked about how, how you might have several identities depending on the activity that you might be doing, and leaning fully into who you are doing that activity, right? And he's known for he worked in hairdressing, and they built a massive company there. He competed in professional cyclists. He's done all these crazy things. Like he was into rodeo for a long time. He's like a fashion thing, like all over, right?
Yeah.
And I remember talking about that, and that conversation helped us. We looked at each other and we're like, today's the day that we decide to be fully us, the Bizros, making mistakes with our accent, leaning on that, having fun. And it's like, people like it, great. If they don't like it, great. They can look anywhere else, right? And that has guided a ton of it. And I think like the people that come into our community are closer to us because of that, right? And it's so exciting and refreshing to see, right? Because you're also not spending extra energy pretending that you're somebody else. Now, my question to you is like early on, the first question that you answer with like through the content farms and the content ecosystems, right? Like, why do you think a lot of companies don't go that route? Is it fear from their C-suite? Is it fear like maybe it's not enough education about verbal identity? Is this like a brand new thing that we're experiencing now? I remember our first client in the service that we've been offering for the last like 3 years was the CMO that believed so much in content, that he had a very big company here in town, 80 employees, right? And he was going around the office with his cell phone, just like trying to record every single employee, and everybody was hiding. And the fit for him was a podcast show where he included his community, his staff members, like his partners, and he was part of that message. And he was fully himself, and he freaking loved it. And they triple sales within like 3 months, and then I think the podcast has made $40 million with the product that they sell because of the content ecosystem and the stuff that they've done in the back end. And it's been a great experience for them over the last 4 years, right? But he fully leaned into that. Why do you think not more companies are doing that?
I think back to something that Fonzie mentioned earlier. It's a long-term play. Okay, midterm also, but it's not a short-term thing. It's not something that gets turned around in a day. And the content that fits, if you want to make it of very good quality, and if you want to make sure that it's the kind of content that can then flow through every other distribution channel or promotion that you're doing or anything else, and to actually have it be useful for the organization or for those that are learning from the organization, then it takes some time and some attention. So it's not that it has to take years. That's not the case. So you can build in 6 to 12 months, for example. You can build easily in a way that's like, already producing very good stuff. But I think that it's a combination of that upfront, and then how do you explain the value of content? How do you explain the value of thought leadership? How do you attribute it? Because marketers, for example, they hate it when they're asked to associate their stuff with sales. Really, regardless of whether they do it or not, they're forced to do it in some cases, but they highly dislike it because they try to explain to the organization, these are not the same things. Yeah. I am not directly responsible for sales, incredibly. I can explain to you, you probably won't believe me and you might not understand, but deep down inside, this is what I believe. Now imagine somebody that works on the branding side, which thought leadership is very much a part of, right? Yeah. That works on that side, trying to explain how what they're doing links to revenue. So one of the things that I tried to do from the get-go, because I know that finance will come knocking at my door at some point, asking like, what is this high value stuff, high ticket stuff that we're doing, and why is it important?
Yeah.
I always go to get the sales and business development folks along with HR on my side. Because
Yeah.
these are two very, one makes a lot of money, the other one costs a lot of money. So on the sales and business development side, I show them the research, I show them the content, I explain to them how to use it, I explain to them how to put it into their processes in order to reach the right people. In order to imagine, sometimes it's as simple as telling somebody, if you have a contributor that is already creating content for the organization and you want them to do an interview for the platform with somebody that you hope to speak to, it really might be that simple for you to get through the door.
Yeah.
And as long
Yeah.
as you make it good, as the current editor-in-chief, if it's educational, useful, practical, and not like super self-promotional of anybody, because you just can't go in that direction at the moment,
Yeah.
then I will approve it. And then you can leverage that connection. But not only that, imagine in conversations, in decks, in pitches, in everything. So I try to educate them on that. In the process, the beauty is that you also educate them on, like we said, verbal identity, which everybody writes, everybody communicates, everybody can benefit from that. So you slowly become their friends. Then the other side, you have HR, which when you lose people or when you need to gain people, it's very costly. Either way. So the beauty with HR is that great content causes people to decide to work for you over somebody else. I've seen it.
Yeah.
I've seen somebody join an organization that I was producing content for at the time and tell me, I was really undecided between two companies, but then I saw that article and I was like, man, that's like exactly it.
Yeah.
No joke.
So good.
And so it's and bonus for the people that are already working for you. So in terms of retention, if you invest in people and their personal brands and the way they're perceived externally, as if you as the organization didn't care if they become very well known and then maybe they leave and they take their personal brand somewhere else, those people will appreciate you until the end of time for giving them something that nobody else is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I go to be friends with those people first because the comms team may understand, even that's a little bit of a, sometimes, but because they're so ingrained in the way they've been producing content that it's hard for them, it's hard for us, to say, hold on, let's just back up a step. I know you have this launch coming up, but let's just set up the stuff a little bit better and cleaner so that we're not, multiplying content, producing the same stuff, overproducing, things like this. So these are the kinds of things that you can focus on a bit. And imagine you build those thought leaders. And like I said before, PR cannot handle all of them. You build them up to then continue building themselves, to then continue building each other. And you have your own little micro influencers.
Yeah.
Again, you don't have to pay for those either. You want what B2C has? Create thought leaders internally and you have your influencers. You don't have to dream for that as B2B. Like you can totally do that. The only thing is you cannot break the code. And the code is that if you're going to create content that is thought leadership, it's not about the company. It's about the person writing or speaking and the person listening. It must present value to both sides. That's the key. That's the code. There is a way to create content that is self-promotional of the organization while still being educational enough to be deemed thought leadership. I agree with that. But because the balance has been so skewed in one direction, right now we just need to significantly push in the pure thought leadership direction until people understand like how to regain the balance later. Because at the moment it's too skewed.
I love it. I mean, I just go back to CHI company that we work with, right? And I think the last 7 employees that they've hired has been people that have followed the CEO's message, right? And they listen to the podcast and they see the videos and they're engaged, right? They're in the groups. And it's so interesting because it's such a natural fit when they come on, right? They already know a lot of it. And same on the sales side. It's so interesting.
Yeah.
I love it.
I'm going to chime in a little bit here. I feel like I've been a little bit too quiet, Flavia. And the reason being is just give me so much food for thought, right? And I'm seeing this one of the things that kind of like you were mentioning, right? Like AI is not the problem, right? And something that you mentioned in that video was the lack of soul in the content as well. And, you know, I'm actually going back to one of the previous conversations we had on the podcast, which was somebody that was mostly pro AI, but also saying that it was not, it was like a good Kickstarter, but good people, you know, will learn to massage and adapt those ideas, right? Like different points of views. But what I'm seeing here is like an intersection between like AI, right? Capacity, which you mentioned before, like thought leadership, and like right at the middle of it is just people wanting to do some thinking. And I think a lot of people just want to outsource their thinking, right? And there's not that many people that actually wants to sit down and think on an idea and beat it up and be like, okay, like this is what I stand for, this is my point of view, and this is what I want to share about, right? And I think part of it is first all that fluff that is around, right, that people keep consuming all the time. It just keeps you like addicted to it. And I'm not gonna lie, like I'm a victim of that sometimes. I'm like scrolling Twitter for way too long, you know, like looking at all these tweets that clearly they're very promotional, disguised in a way of delivering value. Like, hey, like here are the 3 steps you need to do X, Y, and Z. Like if you break it down at the end of the day, it's like it just looks as, don't think about it, I'm just giving you the solution. But the problem is that all the solutions are not the same for, you know, each different case. Like people need to sit down and like elaborate on these thoughts, on these things, on their own problems, how they're gonna, you know, come up with certain solutions. And I don't know, I just find this so interesting, the world that you're moving in. I've loved the whole thought leadership, like for the last, I'll say, year and a half. Like I've been pretty invested into like the people that talk about thought leadership. And I personally have like this fantasy, you know, of like being kind of like Hemingway in a cabin writing about thought leadership and, you know, being this like intellectual person.
You have the glasses.
That, yeah, the glasses are step one. You know, but it, like I love that idea of intellectually presenting my ideas to the world, right? And being able to help people with that. But I feel like at the same time, there's so much noise, right? And then you see, you know, you talked about too, that is like algorithm creating content for algorithms. And it's like, well, like, what if I don't, you know, people might be listening to this and they might be thinking, but what if I don't adapt and, you know, my content is not shown to a lot of people, right? And maybe they're listening, and I'm curious to also hear your opinion about maybe some sort of creators like Gary Vaynerchuk that they're talking about, hey, volume, volume, volume. Like if there's this trend and this trend is an opportunity for you to get in front of your audience, like do this trend, right? Like leave your ego aside. Like there's a lot of things that I've heard around, and I'm like, okay, that is interesting. That is an interesting point of view, right? Like leave your ego aside and jump on a trend that maybe you don't want to do because it'll give you the opportunity to connect with somebody that you might be able to help. But at the same time, internally, I'm like, no, I want to present my thought, you know, like I want to come across as a thought leader. So again, there's a lot of elements and it can get messy. You can just tell, right? And one of the things that I liked about the form that you filled up when you were coming here is like you turn people's stream of consciousness sometimes into gold, into good writing. And I think that is awesome, right? I what I've read from you, like I think is absolutely amazing. And that is the writing that I personally enjoy, rather than, I understand the value of copywriting, but I think there's so much content written in a copywriting format, which is meant to just take you from one sentence to the other until, you know, you click the purchase button, rather than let me actually educate you. Let me give you my point of view, right? So the question is, now that I just blurred all this at you, right, is
We call this section
Did you,
Fonzie Hugs
did you
the
already?
Mic.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
did you already answer your? Maybe you already answered your.
maybe I just answered it, right? But it's like, and this is in a way, right, being honest, it's like an internal struggle, right? It's like, how do
Yeah,
I
believe me.
disconnect? How does the creator, right, the business owner, the thought leader disconnects in a way from all that noise, right? How do they actually start leaning into their thought leadership? And we already mentioned you need to commit to the long-term game, right? And you need to do some thinking. But is that it? You know, sometimes we say is simple, is not easy, right? But I'm curious, like, how do they start leaning into that? How do they start disconnecting from this, fluffy, soulless, creator environment, and they come into, Flavia's realm of soulful content, right? Like, how do people do that?
So, so first,
I threw a lot of you, I
I need
know.
to say this. I need to say no, but I need to say this in like a very respectful way.
Or not, or
So-
not. And that's okay. That's
so,
okay.
so first of all, there are people that, for all the hype that they receive, when you talk to others about what they think about those people, it's not as positive as you might expect. That's your first sign for, let's say, famous content creators that get a lot of attention. But when you
Yeah.
talk to others personally, one on one, and you're having like
Yeah.
a very honest, authentic, to your point, conversation with them, they will tell you, like, I watch their stuff sometimes, but it feels a little bit like this. And all of a sudden you're like, okay. So that means that innately it's not because I'm saying it, but it exists, a very large discrepancy between quality and quantity. So I think that step one is to accept that that's true, and to, if you're going to put quality first, you have to stick to that moving forward for forever. So that's just that's what I've observed. Now, when it comes to actually creating the things, imagine I will give my own personal experience. I'm in a similar situation. I'm not, I haven't been very vocal about things over time. And it's been very word of mouth, the way I got clients, things like this. And so now, if there's that part that I'd like to build, because I would like to give my approach to others, and I would like to educate people on editorial marketing so that I can amplify that beyond just my capability or whatever agency I might have or something like this. I am in the same situation where I want to be true to myself. I have these ideas and I have this, let's say, intellectual property that I would like to freely give, or in some cases for a cost, depends, whatever I'm trying to build.
Yeah.
But I'm using the same platforms as everybody else that makes a whole lot of noise.
Yeah.
I honestly am just remembering constantly, and if anybody else needs to use this as an example, by all means, I put my hand over my heart that it's true. I haven't had to make one bit of noise to be as successful as I've been all these years.
Yeah.
I haven't had to do any of it. Really. You go on my Instagram today, there are like 400 followers. I think Twitter the same. Really. I mean, just
Yeah.
And so the approach that I'm taking is that I see things that I like, for example, but I don't sit there and think, oh, I should do a post like this. Or I see a trend and I say, oh, I should do something like this. I'm trying to be more part of the community and, first of all, answer things and reply to things more than say things, which I think is also just a good, like, boundary to have, or like a little, a little balance to have. And at the same time, I'm trying to take my own advice that I always give to the clients, which I've seen work a lot, is that sometimes you just don't need competitive analysis. And I know that some people will just flip up. Like, can I cuss on this? No, I'm not going to, flip up. They're going to flip a shit when I say this. But sometimes you don't need it, because if you do you, really, if you just do you and do the stuff that feels natural to you, you will be much better off. And all those people that have a whole lot of numbers, they will be the first to panic when things get a little bit wonky, when things change a little bit, when they will be the first to panic. And I've seen very large, the same way we've seen very large organizations kind of crash. It's the same. They're all brands at the end of the day. If you don't play the long-term game in this way, you will survive for a while. I don't know how many, 5 years, 10 years, 20, but to me it doesn't matter, because I from the beginning can already see the end.
Yeah.
If I play that game, and I don't want to. So I try to stay in my own space as much as possible, and when I'm in the space with others, I try to just be helpful.
Yeah.
And anything
Yeah.
that feels outside of that has even my team, I think I drive them crazy sometimes, even with Branding Mag. Like if it has even an ounce of feeling that it's,
Doesn't
like
fit.
not, not, the intention is not 100% pure, either from us or from a partner, from a or whatever it might be.
It's off.
No, it's
Yeah.
off, because
Yeah.
I need to stand on a clean slate. I feel like, and that's one of my values as a person, and therefore it has come out in obviously the businesses that I grow, is
Yeah.
that I don't want anybody, including myself, to be able to point at something in the past and be like, aha,
Mm.
that wasn't true to what you said. Because I'm a writer. I believe in words. What I
Yeah.
say is matters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So these combination of factors is really the only way I've been able to accept being more out there without feeling, weird,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
lack of better words.
Yeah, I like. I mean, kind of like what I mentioned. Is nothing rocket science, right? It's not. It's simple, but it's not easy. And I like the
Yeah.
fact that you like stand with what it seems to be kind of like your values. And you mentioned something, right? The you do you. How and I love that. We actually had a episode not too long ago. We called it the podcast town hall with some good friends, and one of the topics that came out was personality, right?
Mm.
And I think so much content just lacks personality. And the you do you in part is infusing that personality into what you're putting out, right, into the
For
world,
sure.
with, of course, a basis of, this is going to help the person on the other side. And I also like how you referred to previously. It's like, it's not about your company, right? It's about you, the code, how you called it. I think it was. It's like you and the person that is reading. And I really love that. I think you have something to say about the code.
No. No, that's really, you have to be happy with what you produce in the end.
Yeah.
And in my experience, if there's somebody out there that wants to really just take my word for gold, which is totally okay, because I will stand by this until the end of time. If you do you, people will come. It's true.
Yeah.
Take less time looking outside and take less time pointing outside to say, like, that's the reason why the stuff is not working for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's all, like I read very recently, and I actually offered this line to a friend that was going through a difficult time. The line was, and I believe it was from a book by Deepak Chopra, I think. And because I do yoga, and so I, read a bunch of things about this, about spirituality, energy, etc. And the line was, I create the peace that surrounds me.
Mm.
And I totally believe that you create the universe that surrounds you. Not
Yeah.
just the peace, but the stuff that comes in resonance with whatever is going on in you. So
Yeah.
align with that before you start pointing fingers and looking too much outside. And it's as true for people as it is
Yeah.
for organizations, incredibly, which
Yeah.
is
I thought this is so good. And this morning I was reading it's a new book I'm reading. 10x is easier than 2x. And I think a big question that we as creators, right, or as leaders, right, in our organizations is like, why are we doing this, right? At the end of the day, it's like, why are we in the game of creating value and providing value in form of content, whether that's written content, video content? And one of the things that they were saying in that book was like, okay, a 10x goal is a lot easier than a 2x goal, because a 2x goal, you have so much distraction around you, right? So for example, if we bring it back to the example of content, or the context of content, right? You have all these platforms that come out every single day. Like the recent example is Threads, right? Threads, jump in the Threads, whatever, the fastest growing social media platform. You have to tweet there too, and this thing, and we tried it for like a day, and then we were like,
For like 10 minutes.
It's just like, it was such a pain, right? But at the end of the day, what remains constant and consistent for a long time? The show, because our why is so much more. Our why is we want to connect with incredible people that add value to the community, to the listeners. We want to grow as people as well. We want to expand our network. We believe that those people are going to bring opportunities, whatever that is, right? Like it might be speaking on stage, it might be a new business that we just recently purchased, right? It might be a client, it can be a referral, it could be a new friend, who knows, right? But we know that there's going to be something amazing, right? And that keeps driving us. That's our 10x content wise, is like the podcast, right? Nothing changes, right? So then there's no distractions, because all the 2x distractions are down here, right? And it's like, oh, well, do we need to like also do like a daily YouTube video? Well, you hear all these YouTube creators being burned out because they're in the constant algorithm trying to keep up with like the trends and the attention resets and all this. Like it just gets such freedom. There's elements of that you can use to leverage, but what are those elements to you, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's so cool that your message is getting out there and that you are pushing.
Imagine how much time I had to accumulate it, though,
Oh,
because
man,
I didn't say much. So that's also a testament to it. Maybe right now for me, it's I have a lot to say. I can produce content in a seemingly quick manner or something like this, but that's because I spent years.
Yeah.
I spent years honing
Yeah.
that.
It's like if we
that
ask you right
intellectual
now,
property.
yeah, it's like we ask you now, like let's say you go speak with an event. By the way, like you're gonna be in South by Southwest, correct? With Chris Doe, an amazing panel.
We'll see.
Ooh, baby,
We'll
yes.
see.
Yeah,
You gain my vote. I will say
I
that.
create the peace that surrounds me. My answer is we're gonna be there, but
yes, of course.
Yeah.
And
You gain 2 votes. Just
Yes.
saying.
thank you guys.
And if we ask you today, it's like, hey, are you nervous about talking about this topic? Probably not, right? Because you've been doing this for so long, and like you know what you believe in, you know what you're doing.
Oh, but give me a chance here to be super honest with whoever is listening to this. I get so nervous before I have to speak anywhere. Anywhere. I am the epitome of nervous before I have to do a podcast like today. I've been nervous for the last like 24 hours, to be honest. When I had to get up on the stage for my own event, Lord have mercy on my soul in that moment, really. Because all eyes were there. And like I said, I'm always in the background, really. But I'm a good speaker. That's not the point. So the skills are there. It's just I try to be so careful with what I say that to be in situations like this is like a very good learning experience also for me. Like I said, to gain internally more and more of the stability that I need to move forward.
Yeah.
But for everybody that's listening, it's very much, everybody has their
You did amazing.
Yeah,
you did also. You just mentioned something right now that caught my attention. You said, I'm very careful with what I say, right? And at the very beginning, we were talking about perfection, right? Perfectionism, which is kind of like meaning that you have some sort of expectations, right? Like that sense of control with kind of like in a way doesn't allow for authenticity. You've come across very authentic. Right.
Yeah,
let me tell you.
That's something that I'm working on, because yes, I have a lot of expectations of myself to create some kind of, not. It sounds so haughty when I say it this way, but to create, like I want to be perfection in my eyes. I don't.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what other people really. I'm sorry to say, but it doesn't matter to me what other people think. I want to be good with me. So, but I have very high expectations. So I'm trying to draw that back so that I can be more natural with myself, not because once I start speaking, I'm not a very good liar. I'm not a very good any of that. So it comes out honestly for better or for worse sometimes. But in the pre moments of that, there's definitely I'm still learning about the things that I know to be true, but I'm still learning to integrate them into myself, so that they function naturally without me having to, remind myself, hold on.
Think a little about it. Yeah.
What is that thought? Let's just, the same way it came in, say bye-bye, let it go out.
Thank you for that insight. I think that's very important for people, right? To distinguish is, yesterday I was watching, the video of this guy that he graduated with me from high school. And, he was actually a year older than me, and he got pulled back a year, and then he ended up graduating with me. And on paper, you might have said, oh, this guy won't be very successful, right? And he ended up building this awesome media company in Argentina, right? One of the biggest media companies in social media. and now he's building his personal brand. And I've been loving his journey. I'm tuning into, he just launched a podcast, and yesterday he talked about kind of like the similarities between surfing and life, and how you have obviously these peaks and valleys and whatnot, right? And he go and he shared a note after that he just wrote on his phone, kind of like reflecting on like, hey, look, like even though I share about all this positive stuff, just know that I'm actually the first one to be dealing with all these problems. Like, I'm an emotional person, right? I like, just know that you're not alone. And I think sometimes, and I'm curious to hear your opinion on this, but I feel like most of the thought leadership that I hear about, and I know sometimes it might not be tied to too many personal things, but it just comes across as just the peaks, right? Like, I'm just talking about the peaks, and it lacks that insight that you just did, which is great, because I think that is what fully connects with the listener and inspires them and brings that personality and builds more rapport with the person that might be wanting to work with you. So yeah, I'm curious on how you see that.
I think it's fantastic if you meet somebody that is riding a peak and seemingly riding a consistent peak, and they've reached that point. Brilliant. Like,
Yeah.
wow. The key is, so you were mentioning earlier the why you do things. So that's the driver, and that's great. That's great to mention. That's great for people to know, etc. But that's not your thought leadership. Your thought leadership is the how. So if I meet somebody that is up, down, in the middle, always up, always down, regardless of those details, my question will always be how. And if they can communicate their how they do things to me, and this is as true for, again, for business as it is for people with their personal experiences, if you can communicate to me the how in a way that is open and practical enough for me to glean something from, not because I'm going to, necessarily like apply it exactly the same, to your point, like the things don't fit 100% the same, because we each have our own situations, our own lives, our own business models, our own whatever it might be. There are nuances, but you can learn a lot from somebody else if they're willing to teach you a lot. So this is, how should I say this? I'm just pinning on the fact that, right now I mentioned, the other side of, a personality that comes off as very extroverted, which is great. But imagine if I was just extroverted, and if I'm just great at doing this. There are for sure still aspects of how I prepare for these moments, or how I do things, regardless of whether I feel super comfortable or super uncomfortable. There's a lot that I could teach even about that, regardless of whether I'm at a peak, at a valley, it's just about, it's a lot about the intention and the willingness to do so. And so that's, I think, how you can create the thought leadership that will really resonate with people.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm still in this from one of our clients, but that is the right AI, which is attention and intention. Like, put those right into what you're building. Attention and intention. I know we're getting close to the end, and my brother probably is about to throw me under the bus, but I do have one selfish question.
Not just one. You've been asking 10 selfish questions. What you say?
Flavia, you mentioned you are big into your intuition, right? And I can definitely tell that by today's conversation. I also want to know, like, I'm sure this plays some sort of role into your editorial process. And, I'm curious with, we produce a lot of short form content, in the sense of like, we grab these conversations and try to grab, what we call the golden boulders, right? Just like golden nuggets, just a little bit bigger. And we try to pull those and then kind of like share them. And I'm curious from your editorial point of view, like, what would be your criteria for grabbing those moments? Are you even, you might not even be for that strategy, if that makes sense. But what is your criteria when looking at these certain things and you kind of went already a little bit by it, right? Standing with the values and of the company, what, how, your verbal identity and whatnot. But I'm curious, like, let's say we pull all these clips and then we send them to you. How would you look at them? And I'm asking super selfishly because I'm about to send this to our editor for our content and project manager.
So how would I choose the moments that I would bring to the forefront? Like the
yeah, and
I
how would you
almost wanted to
present
say
them as well?
clips, but compared to your boulders, it doesn't sound so. Doesn't sound so
Yeah,
mean.
they're clips at the end of the day. You know, we just branded it as golden boulders. And yeah, and how would you present them?
How would I choose them and how would I present them? If I were you or if I were me?
No,
Me looking at
you.
myself or
Yeah, you.
Oh, we know how
So
Fonzie
if I-
does it.
So if I had to choose, well, it's a little bit of an unfair advantage because I know myself. So I know the moments when stuff has come out that I've never said before in a certain way. I will recognize those moments and I will say, here, you didn't think too much about what to say and you just said it.
Oh,
I
sorry.
think everybody has, it might actually be interesting for you guys to ask the people that you interview to look and select just out of curiosity. I don't know. I know it's additional work, but in my case, I would know and I would definitely choose the ones, regardless of, back to the point of perfectionism, I will always value the honesty over whether it was perfect or not. And I will choose to put myself in the position that makes me grow, which means that I will choose the ones that were most natural, even if putting something, let's say, less than optimal in my silly mind sometimes out there would make me a little bit uncomfortable. I would go for those just because of what it means to me and my values.
I like it.
I don't know if that fully answers your question though, because
yeah, I think in a way it does, right? And as you were sharing that, I was putting in my work, kind of like systemizing it. Like, okay, like seems like the process for you is asking yourself a set of questions on, like how thoughtful was that comment, right? Like, is it thoughtful enough for me that I want to share it or not? Yes. Like, did it have the intention, right? That we talk about it. Yes. Like, does it come out authentic, right? Like that personality piece of it as well.
But that's my personal opinion. But from a business perspective, or let's say like I don't want to call this a business setting, but you know what I mean. From a professional perspective, you've been taking notes all this time. Mm-hmm. There's stuff that resonates with you. My advice, if it was you choosing the stuff, is choose the stuff that made you think and not the things that you think people want to see.
I like that.
Choose what was valuable. Choose the stuff that was valuable for you.
You and me think the same. You're saying. You and me think the same. Fonzie, I don't know. He keeps asking about this process.
No, it's because I care, and I'm going to be honest. And I've shared this with my brother a lot of times. There's a lot of times that content has gone out that I'm just personally not proud of it. We had this conversation before that I'm like, dude, I want to be proud of the stuff that goes out. I want to be excited. And honestly, this conversation has led me to think a lot of stuff, and I know I'm gonna keep thinking about it long after the conversation, but in a way is okay. Now debating is the perfectionism and the expectations, right? Like that maybe control freak, like, and of course now after this conversation, there's a lot of now things that I need to ponder on. I need to probably go for a week in a cabin and just sit down and meditate a lot.
The fact that you want things to be good when they go out there is not perfectionism.
Yeah.
Sitting there and thinking about what is the optimal, like sitting there and over stressing on some of the details. I think that's something that you can remove and better spend that time again.
Yeah.
Thinking about what worked for you and focus on growing that part with that extra time that you're not spending. Because that's not being a perfectionist. That's just, how should I say it? That's taking
care, right?
Of yourself. Yeah, because at the end of this journey, however long it may be,
Yeah.
you have to be satisfied with what you
Yeah.
you have to be satisfied, proud, happy with what you've done. Nothing else will matter in that moment.
Yeah.
It's true in the
And
micro moments just as much as it is in the macro moment of life.
Hey,
this
every day is Sunday.
this is this is a very valid fear that a lot of people have, right?
Yeah.
Like we deal with this like the last 4 years. That has been our service to others, and we see it every single day. And we've been in groups where that very specific way to create content, right? Because of capacity, production, type of team that they're doing, it comes out every single day, right? And my personal belief is like if this interview, the whole interview, is great, anything that we can grab from the interview is gonna be great. So that's maybe my personal view on why I feel the way that I feel, and I'm just putting it out there because there might be people thinking the same way, right? Who knows? And at the end of the day, it's like, well, we obviously have to have a standard as a brand, right, on messaging, and we talked about this the whole session. But I absolutely.
No, I was going to say that I like that you focus on the mindset a little bit more, because there was something very nice that happened in one of the interviews that we did for Branding Mag a while back. And a guy named Finn McKenty said, I cannot possibly teach somebody the skill set if they don't have the mindset. And Lord, did I completely understand what he was saying.
Yeah.
And so everybody's always looking for a template. Everybody's always looking for the right thing to do the skill. But if more people would spend their time not only in the headspace of growing their mindset, and then acting with that mindset and having others see them do that, and simultaneously pair that with an openness to share in the process of how they do their stuff, man, would it be so much more useful for the population as a whole in any industry, in any situation, than to continuously just try to teach everybody the skills with, I said, templates and structures. And, it needs some breath. If we plan on growing and evolving, we got to give it some breath.
Yeah. Flavia,
side note.
No, this is so good, and I think it's a good play. I mean, we kept you hostage for like 30 more minutes, so
I didn't even notice.
But this has been an absolute pleasure and an honor. Thank you for coming to the show and trusting us with your message. It's always fun. We have one last question. I promise. It's quick. It's not gonna be like. It's not.
This is the Hispanic goodbye.
This is the Hispanic goodbye. Fonz is like, I'll ask you a question, and then 30 minutes later, the question comes out. But where will you be if you never published?
If I never published? Wow. In what sense? Like if I never created any content, never...
Yeah. What would be your life?
Where would you think you will be at the moment?
Oh my gosh. If you guys ask, well, this is a personal answer, but I've always said that if this technological world and my stuff bothers me for long enough to a point where it like crosses a line, I think I'm going to like go off into the mountains with goats and just make cheese, really, because that is the kind of person that I am. Like if I cross a line, I'm out. Like, it's very true. Anybody that knows me will say that it's true. And I've always made this joke that if it, how should I say, if I can't do it in the way that I enjoy, if it reaches a certain point, I will go in a completely opposite direction that has nothing to do. So I don't know if maybe that's what I would have done. Well, okay. Originally, I wanted to work in like international relations. Yeah, that was my goal because I wanted to, go back to Romania, and I know languages very well and things like this. And so that was my original plan. But I went to my first course for politics at NYU, and man, were these people passionate about politics. And I was like, I can't.
You're like, this is not my flow.
This is not. Yeah, I'm like, I have no idea what you guys are talking. nor do I want to talk about it. So clearly,
U-turn.
This is I was like, this is not what I thought this would be. So I went back to to journalism and communications because I had always enjoyed writing. So most likely I would have I don't know, written and not published. Maybe I believe I still would have written, but I just wouldn't have told anybody.
Interesting.
From soulful creator to soulful cheesemaker.
Fun fact: we have an uncle that lives in Miami, and he came to my dad with a business idea to have goat cheese in the US. And yeah, who knows? Maybe it's like the $1 billion company that our family needs. Maybe they'll beat us to the goat cheese.
Hey, maybe it's about the simple life.
Fun fact, I'm a certified blueberry farmer, if that helps you with anything.
That
for
is
reasons left for another conversation, or for reasons that will never be published.
Certified blueberry farmer leads the world in thought leadership. I don't know.
That's a new headline. The new headline for the show today. But Flavia, it was so awesome having you here. Is there any last things that you want to share with us today?
Oh my goodness! No, I'm sure it all came out the way it was meant to up until now.
I have nothing
but
left,
thank
guys.
you very much, really. Thank you for your patience and listening to me and giving me the chance to say what I had to say. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It was awesome. It was great having you here. And if by any chance we go one day to, the islands over there, we'll let you know.
Yes, please.
Paradise.
You're more than welcome.
Yeah.
We'll go farm some blueberries and make some cheese.
Yeah. I want to ask
That's in
Fonzie
Romania. That's a different kind of paradise. But you can also go there.
I know.
I would love to. I wanna live in Europe in some moment in my life.
I asked her about Jika Hagi. That's how I know Romania. Yeah.
Jika Hagi.
Well,
but you should definitely go.
Yeah.
If you like greenery, if you like mountains, Transylvania is where I'm from and where many of the people in the team are from also is beautiful.
Oh, maybe
future
Contents Profit retreat.
Not in the middle of the winter, though, yeah? Because compared to where you guys live, it's like minus 20, 30 degrees. And don't
yeah, here's summer year long. It's Florida.
Yeah,
same here on the island. Yeah, same. That's what I'm saying. So it's definitely next year.
Well,
next year.
Guys, with that said, I think I'm not asking you because we're gonna be here 30 more minutes.
Yeah.
So, Flavia, again, thank you so much. And with that said, thank you so much for tuning into the Contents Profit Podcast. Go ahead and follow the show in your favorite podcasting platform and on social media at BizRoseCo.
That is Ryan and Flavia here, help you move one step closer towards your goal. Please don't forget to share this episode and leave a 5-star review. And don't forget that every day is Sunday.
That's right, every day is Sunday. Bye, guys. Take care.